Hi guys. I'm pretty sure we've got most of the attendees. Anyone who comes on late, we'll be sharing the recording of this afterwards. So yeah, welcome.
Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Here we're going to be talking about how to keep people engaged in your mentoring program. So this is an important topic for us, one we're always thinking about and defining so that we can meet expectations and help deliver amazing mentoring relationships, which can essentially change lives for the better. So who are we? So I'm Zach. I'm the head of customer success here at Mentorloop. And I'm joined by Lucy, who is our co-founder and CEO.
Hi.
Lucy is a treasure trove of mentoring wisdom. So today I'll be hosting and interviewing Lucy in a Q&A format.
Cool. So yeah, and I guess to kind of just give a little bit of background on us, you guys have registered, so you probably do know about Mentorloop, but essentially we believe the right connection can change your life. And so we, I guess, put that belief into practice by enabling great mentoring relationships to happen in organizations. And our kind of ethos is to make mentoring mainstream, and the way we do that is to help companies and communities and universities and other educational bodies build a mentoring culture internally to bring mentoring off, away from the fringe. It used to be kind of offered mainly to high performing individuals or people with a very specific need, but we believe it should be offered to everyone. And so we have built our software to enable that. Great.
So let's get cracking. Firstly, we're going to try to kick off with a poll. And so that should be coming up on your screen shortly. And so the question we're going to put into this poll is, so we can frame the discussion, who is currently running a mentoring program? So I'll just get you to click the best option out there when that clicks up in front of you. So whilst we're waiting through those results, I'll do an agenda walkthrough here. So the topics we're going to be running through, firstly, what does success look like? Setting expectations up front, putting the mentee in the driver's seat, keep beating the mentoring drum, measure, course correct, optimize, and measure against, and then finally we'll end with a Q&A. So with that Q&A at the end, you can submit questions that occur to you as we're going through. Or you can do them at the end by the questions widget in front of you.
So just to, I guess, drill in a little bit more on what that agenda, I guess, means as well. The first two items are essentially kind of talking about how with a mentoring program you want to start as you mean to continue. So it's basically what we're setting up at the start to enable us to achieve our engagement outcomes we're looking for. The third point is around empowering the mentee. The fourth point is more speaking to the mentoring program coordinator's role and a little bit to the role that software can play here, if that's applicable. And then the fifth point is around measurement, specifically because, we're kind of getting nowhere if we can't measure the engagement that we're trying to achieve with our mentoring programs. And the results of the poll are in.
So it looks like we have 100% of the people who we're doing right now are actually running mentoring programs, which I promise is the honest answer we're looking at right now.
Yeah. Which is great because I guess it's more real for you guys because, obviously we do run webinars for how to make a business case for mentoring programs, how to get them set up. But now today we're talking about actual, maintaining and building engagement. And so it makes sense that you're all already doing that. And yeah, as Zach said, please do just click on the little Q&A icon at the bottom if there are questions occur to you as we proceed. Okay,
so first off the rank, what does success look like? Lucy, we often refer to this internally as the why. Can you help elaborate a bit more on what I mean by this?
Sure. So this is where we always start with both kind of our internal and external stuff at Mentorloop. So we start by asking, why are we embarking on this particular initiative, whatever it happens to be? What are we trying to achieve? And therefore, what does success look like for us? So the five kind of blocks you see on this slide refer to that kind of overarching goal of your mentoring program. These are the five most common that we see. You may have others that are around, for example, engagement, building engagements, particularly if you're working with kind of a community or an alumni network. But for a lot of our corporate clients, it's generally around retention, diversity, learning and development, culture, and leadership as well. And so those are the kind of, I guess, drivers, as in the why behind the mentoring programs, I guess, initiative. But overall, our goal is to build or enable great mentoring relationships to happen and to flourish. And so if we identify what that success looks like in terms of what kinds of engagement we're wanting to build within, under that overarching goal of whether it's diversity or engagement or culture, then we can iterate toward that success over time. We can drive engagement to achieve this outcome rather than just driving engagement for engagement's own sake. So what we kind of refer to here internally sometimes is vanity metrics. So you might be looking for, I guess, a frequency of interaction amongst your mentors and mentees. So you might be like, I want them to see each other or to communicate once every 21 days. And while that can be one, small part of the broader picture of engagement, it's not necessarily bringing you towards the outcome you want to achieve or the success you want to achieve. And so we like to, I guess, steer away from vanity metrics and actually look at meaningful engagement metrics for the mentoring program. And we'll speak more to that when we get to the reporting section.
So next up, what kind of expectations do we want to set? Lucy, what is important to define from the outset?
Okay, so I'm going to break down 3 kind of tiers of setting expectations here. So the first one is program or organization-wide expectations. So, I guess while more and more employees, particularly as millennials, are kind of flooding the workforce, 75% of millennials deem mentoring critical to their success, and so they're tending to demand it. So while it is becoming more common, we don't want to, I guess, position mentoring as a default behavior. We do believe it's still a privilege to access a great mentor. And so we believe in kind of setting those expectations with your mentors and mentees up front. So getting them to essentially agree, either implicitly or tacitly, that they, by participating in the program, they are undertaking to conduct themselves with respect, to, adhere to the company or community values, etc. So how formal you make this is up to you. It can just be around the communication and the training that you wrap around your mentoring program, and that training might be in person, or it might be something that you distribute via email, prompts or online resources. But some of our clients actually go to the extent of asking participants in the mentoring program to actually agree to terms and conditions. So the terms under which they're agreeing to be part of the program, and agreeing to that as a condition of their actually being part of the program. So that's at the program level in terms of setting expectations. The next level down is the relationship level. So that relationship between mentor and mentee. So as part of each of these individual relationships, we get the mentor and mentee to both undertake to operate according to certain parameters. So it might be around the frequency of their interaction, their commitment to working on their mentoring relationship even when they're apart, and the separation of responsibilities to help drive that relationship. So who's in charge of setting up the meetings, who's in charge of distributing the notes afterwards, etc. So what you see in front of you in this image is what we call our mentoring agreement. And as well as those items I've mentioned that you can see there around frequency and types of communication, as well as a little bit of touching on goals, we also have a confidentiality agreement in that mentoring agreement. And that's really important. We want to build a culture of trust between mentor and mentee. It is a distinct relationship beyond that you'd have with your direct reports or with your manager, and it needs to be a safe space to have the best possible outcome. So that's program level, the individual relationship level, and then we look at the third level, which is actually the agreement that mentors and mentees make with themselves to get the most out of the mentoring relationship. And so this is where we refer to kind of goal setting as a catch-all for a number of different behaviours. So I guess in the simplest way, kind of what do you as an individual want to get out of your participation in the mentoring program, and what are your personal goals for the program, and what commitment do you make to reach them? So at Mentorloop, in the picture you see there, we do have our own goal setting framework. So it's based on the SMART goal setting framework, which you might be familiar with, but a lot of different organisations use different ones. There's the CLEAR framework, OKRs. There's a number of really good, best practice kind of frameworks out there. But the point of the framework is that you're providing a frame of reference to your mentors and mentees around which they can set those goals, because people can be intimidated if they're asked to set a goal up front. Often they're kind of put on the spot like a rabbit in the headlights, and they're just like, oh, goal, I hadn't thought about that. So we do like to, I guess, ease people into goal setting by asking them kind of at a top level, what are the types of things you want to achieve? And so giving them kind of some categories through which to, I guess, narrow down what they want to do. And then we guide them into more specific goals around what do they actually want to achieve in the next 12 months, and how can that be measured? And then what habits do they want to start to develop? And the goals can shift. So it's really important that when it's communicated to mentors and mentees as they're entering that relationship, that they might be setting a goal for the relationship. It's certainly totally fine for the goals to shift, and it even, it demonstrates a healthy relationship if the goals are more fluid, because you're naturally going to grow and change during the program, and so your expectations of yourself will grow and change as well. But the beauty of the mentee in particular thinking about their goals before they're matched or before that first meeting is that they go into the relationship with an idea of outcomes and some context for that first discussion with their mentor. And even if the mentor turns around and says that goal's not realistic or you should be aiming higher, there's still a frame of reference that they can kind of pivot away from rather than just entering the relationship blind. We also encourage mentors to think about what they want to achieve, and it might not be a specific time-bound goal. It might be something more like an ideal outcome or a motivation like paying it forward, for example, or reconnection into the industry. But, mentors, this is a reciprocal, mutually beneficial relationship. We want mentors to be thinking, consciously about what they're getting out of it too.
So one of the key things we talk about here is putting the mentee in the driver's seat. So whilst Lucy was talking about, the reciprocal benefits for mentees and mentors alike, traditionally, whilst there is tremendous value for a mentor in a mentoring relationship, these relationships are traditionally for the benefit of the mentee. Barring, of course, things like reverse mentoring. So Lucy, what are some of the good examples of feedback we've had from mentors to date in this regard?
So I guess I wanted to lead with these very specific bits of feedback because we do, we're constantly kind of getting bits of feedback from mentors and mentees, and there is a really strong theme coming from our mentors. So I'll just read a couple of these here now. So from one mentor, my mentee does not seem very engaged with the process/program and is finding it difficult to make time for us to meet. Second one is just need to remind the mentee that they are the one who needs to initiate meetings, smiling winky face. And then if we as mentors are not effectively used as a resource by mentees, it's hard to drive an agenda. So this is a thread, it's not an overwhelming, we're not saying that every relationship is broken, but we are seeing this thread of feedback from active mentors across, the different companies that use Mentorloop, where there is a little element of frustration that mentors don't feel like they're being used correctly or they're not being kind of tapped correctly. So we do, and as Zach says, we're generalizing here because it's not every single program. Some programs will put emphasis on the mentor because they just might be streets ahead in experience, or there might be a reverse or peer mentoring thing taking place. But where you are doing a more traditional mentor-mentee relationship, we do believe the mentee should be in the driver's seat. The mentee needs to have at least thought about their goals, even if they're still, a little bit fluid. And they need to kind of, set that agenda for their first meeting with that mentor. And as well as that, we build a lot of education for the mentee around not just setting the agenda, but sharing it beforehand, sharing 3 key questions for their mentor, specific questions beforehand to inform that first conversation. And we believe that it should be in the mentee's frame of responsibility to actually schedule the meetings, because arguably the mentee is less busy and their calendar is more flexible. So the mentee should be the one, pinging the mentor, proposing 3 possible times and locking that time in. And we also believe that if say you're meeting outside of the workplace for a coffee, that the mentee should pay for that coffee. But that can be, negotiated in those individual relationships. And the mentees don't need to be alone in this. As we say, we build resources for it. Zach will speak to some of our resources that we make available to mentors and mentees shortly. But I want to make the point here that we advocate developing and sharing tactical resources, not just kind of flat written resources. So we often see programs set up with a long, wordy and unwieldy kind of mentoring handbook, which is great on detail, but kind of short on actionable points. So we like to flip this. The majority of our resources are tactical, by which I mean they can be deployed and used immediately. So for example, agenda templates, checklists before a meeting, and for use during a meeting, the mentoring agreement you saw before, follow-up tasks and practical questions that both mentors and mentees you can use to kick off a conversation. So we've talked about how to get started, how to set those expectations and how to hold the mentees accountable. And now then for the next portion, we're going to come to the role of the program coordinators in this, and specifically how you can help set that rhythm going in the mentoring program to prevent mentoring falling by the wayside. So, there might be a flurry of activity up front, and then you want to be able to maintain a level of activity that you're comfortable with over time. I think it's worth here just defining the program coordinator role. So we say here that mentoring programs that get great results have an engaged program coordinator who is beating the mentoring drum. So what we mean by a program coordinator is, it's probably the role that a lot of you on this call will be fulfilling. It's the person who's tasked with the management of a mentoring program and the outcomes that come out of that program. And it's possibly someone who's already time poor. This is something that's been potentially put on them as, in addition to their usual responsibilities. And so, it's someone who needs to use their time really efficiently and effectively. So and Zach will go into a little bit more detail on this, but basically the more of a drumbeat. And so we say drumbeat specifically because we don't want to advocate high frequency necessarily, because different programs will require different frequency. And so for some, monthly might be appropriate. For some, that are the shorter programs, it might be more appropriate to do every 3 weeks. But for others, it might be appropriate to do it every 6 weeks. It depends on what you want to achieve with your program. But we do advocate these regular check-ins with mentors and mentees to keep mentoring front of mind for them, but also to encourage their kind of progress and reflections. And we'll talk about that reflection piece a little bit more in the measurement section. But I guess the point is that as a program coordinator, you're not on your own. Even if you're not a Mentorloop client, we do make a lot of these resources available online with nudges, resources, ideas for check-ins, that kind of thing. So I might hand over to Zach to speak to those specifically.
So nudges, speaking of some of those tactical resources that Mentorloop provides to keep the flywheel of engagement moving with momentum, these are essentially an automated content track which help guide our mentors and mentees throughout their mentoring relationship. So these use useful prompts, ideas and resources and documents where useful. And so as far as resources, we do have a variety of resources available to us. Just like the mentoring agreement one we saw earlier, we have an incredible library you can look at. So, we've been writing a lot of thought leadership, as it were, blog posts, a lot of material available for mentor and mentee alike, as well as program coordinators like yourselves, articles, podcasts, and webinars like this one. And so we really encourage you to see what resources can best work for your program, and we're here to help steer between the library of what we have available. So when it comes to measuring, course correcting, optimizing, and then measuring again, this goes beyond your mentoring program participants with their best chance for success. This goes beyond equipping your mentoring program participants with their best chance of success. Lucy, how can mentoring program coordinators measure, optimize, and course correct when necessary?
Cool. So I guess the main overarching point is to keep checking in. We see a lot of programs, let's say they're running, for example, for 12 months, they historically might kick off with a whole lot of activity, and then 12 months later they run a survey to see how everybody went, basically. And it's the mistakes kind of made here are that those programs, they don't find out until it's too late, that certain mentoring relationships may have withered on the vine. They're relying on mentors and mentees to come to them directly to let them know if something hasn't worked out. And as a mentee, if you're kind of a young person in your career, you might feel a bit awkward by putting your hand up and saying, my mentors stopped helping me, or they've stopped responding. No one wants to drop someone else in it. And so, it's kind of, I guess, makes more sense that it's on the part of the program coordinator to drive this communication. And so when program coordinators don't check in, they don't take the opportunity to course correct during the program. And so to identify where more support may be needed by mentors or by mentees. And because they don't take that opportunity to course correct, they don't recognise when relationships may have run their course. And, sometimes you have 3 coffees with someone and you get this information you need about them. It might inform a pivot in, the goal that you want to achieve. And so there might be a case for rematching. And ideally, you'd be able to, as program coordinator, you'd be able to get an idea of when your users have run their course in a particular relationship. And if your program's still running, give them an opportunity to find and connect in another meaningful relationship. So, success is not just a function of the frequency of interaction, as we mentioned earlier. And so reporting on success is really important. And it's important that it takes into account not just frequency and types of interaction, but it's also a function of user sentiment. So are they satisfied, unsatisfied, wrapped, kind of deeply unhappy with the way the program's going, and their progress. So are they actually achieving the goals that they set out to achieve? So regular check-ins, and when I say regular, most of our clients, if they're running a 12-month program, will run a little health check every 3 months. But that feedback allows for the course correction, but it also kind of brings mentoring back into the mind's eye for the mentoring participants. And so each time you check in with them and say, how are you going against this goal that you said you wanted to achieve, you're breathing fresh life into the mentoring program, particularly if there's been a break. So that basically brings us, and it's pretty good timing because we've only got about 5 minutes left, but to the formal end of what we had prepared to talk to you about. So as we kind of covered, I guess getting that great engagement in your program is a function of how you set up the program in the early days, how you hold mentees to account, how you as program coordinator can intervene and help your mentors and mentees to achieve better results. And then finally, obviously measurement is really important. So engagement, you need to be intentional about how you're going to measure engagement and what good engagement looks like so that you can, craft your mentoring program accordingly. So we might jump into questions. Remember, if you have any questions, just pop into that Q&A box and enter them. And Zach, Guy's one of our other colleagues, but Zach, if you want to read out one of the questions that we've received.
Yep, so I can see Lynn has asked, how much time does the PC need to keep engagement up within the mentoring program?
That's a really good question, but it does vary. So it depends on the program. But I suppose we see, there is naturally going to be more demand on a program coordinator's time in that first month that they get their program up and running. So when they're actually, actively recruiting mentors and mentees to be a part of it, they're vetting mentors and mentees to see if they're appropriate. And then beyond that first month, we'd probably see, and it does depend on how many users you've got, but we'd probably see the kind of 2 to 5 hours per month being required just to kind of, review results, check in with your users. You might just send a couple of kind of resources a month out to mentors and mentees to keep that drumbeat that we mentioned going. But really, it shouldn't be onerous. There should be kind of a top and tail of when you're setting it up and when you're reporting on it. But as mentoring program coordinator, it should be something that can slip into your other responsibilities really seamlessly.
Okay, we've got another question here from Emily, who says, thanks for the presentation. Thanks, Emily. She's asking if there's a sample mentoring agreement in our resources library.
There sure is. So yeah, there absolutely is. So we'll send to you guys who have participated, we'll send a link to our resources library and also just directly to the resources in our blog. They're slightly different. The resources library is more aimed at mentors and mentees. And then the blog is for both program coordinators and mentors and mentees, but we'll send those through to you after this.
Another question there from Sanjay, who asks, what kind of goals the mentors usually set?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's funny, like when we first started talking about Mentorloop and what we were trying to do, we did get a lot of people say to us, what's in it for the mentor? And what we've, I guess, found over time, I mean, we always thought it was kind of obvious, but it did force us to look into it. And what the mentors get, I guess, the goals or the why of why they kind of participate is often it's about paying it forward. So they do actually they feel good about giving their time, but it's also about keeping connected. So particularly if they're, partially retired, for example, a mentor can keep their hand in their industry by connecting with, the young up and comers. And then it's actually, I guess, a really great way to build your leadership skills. So when we survey mentors after a mentoring program, they often say to us that the advice that they heard themselves giving to their mentees held up a mirror to themselves and gave them more clarity in what they were trying to achieve. So I guess to answer the question, what do they usually set? They say things like pay it forward or expand my network. But in terms of what they actually achieve, it's much richer and deeper than that.
Okay, great. I think that's just about all the time that we've wrapped up. If we haven't covered, we just got one more question there.
Yeah, we can squeeze it in.
Yeah, we can squeeze it in. So Katie asks, would you recommend the program coordinator be very familiar with the information in all resources available to mentors, mentees?
Yes, absolutely we would. Katie just said sorry because she jumped in at the 3:29 mark. But yes, absolutely, Katie. If you've got time, definitely read through them. They're resources that are intended for mentors and mentees, but they also are great for, if the program coordinator knows where they are, then as soon as you're asked a question, you can easily direct people to a place where that you don't have to answer each question fresh because you've got a whole library you can refer mentors and mentees to. And as we say, we'll share links to those relevant resources portals after this, and there will be a recording of this webinar available too.
And even with that point, I would say, depending on the kind of program you want to design, we're here to help recommend the best possible resources so that you have a good set at hand too. You don't necessarily need to be across the entire library in your head, and we're here to make that easy for you. So I think that concludes our webinar for today. If you have any more questions, of course, our team can reach out. You can reach out to our team or vice versa, of course, and we are more than happy at any time to answer any more questions about mentoring generally or just Mentorloop platform. So thanks so much for joining us. Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for dialing in. And all the best with your mentoring adventures.